Bathurst, cars on the warm-up lap, race 1 of 2 for the weekend. And Chaz Mostert will start from pole for Ford Performance Racing. Cars on the warm-up lap ahead of this 14-lapper James Moffat. This will be a good one, 150 points on the line. And let's have a look at this track map. 23 turns, but we never call it by the turn numbers because there's some famous corner names on this track.
Especially up over the mountain, through Reed Park, McPhillamy Park, and then one of the most famous sites up over Skyline. Without doubt, the best track in the country.
And coming back this year is the traditional name of the Chase. It's back to being Caltex Chase. There it is, turns 20, 21, 22. Final turn at Murray's Corner, leading them onto pit straight. Cars rolling around down the bottom of Conrod Straight. But in terms of qualifying, it was a really keenly fought session. But in the end, the Armour All Pole Position Award for the third time in 2012 went to Chaz Mostert. He's chasing down Scott McLaughlin in the championship, and he just missed the qualifying record of Steve Owen from a couple of years ago. He did a fantastic job. His pole time, 2 minutes 7.82. He's on pole by 0.6 of a second over Nick Percat. Andrew Jones, Scott McLaughlin rode 2. Lots of drivers here with main game experience.
And 7 of the top 8 on the grid this weekend are doing double duty. The only bloke that isn't is on pole, Chaz Mostert.
Yeah, who would have thought that that would be how it works out? Normally it's the guys who are doing double duty that dominate the Dunlop series. Elliot Barber, first time in the mountain in a V8 supercar. Ash Walsh, bit further back on the grid. He's had some dramas in the early part of the weekend. Ben Eggleston's back in the series. Brett Stewart's changed cars since we last saw him. He's updated to a slightly newer Paul Morris Motorsport chassis. He'll start down the back alongside Michael Hector. Nandy Kiss will not start. He crashed in qualifying. That ex-PWR Commodore is out for the weekend. Series points coming into this one, round 5 of 7. McLaughlin leads by 88 over Chaz Mostert, who, remember, was pinged 50 points for 2 separate incidents at Queensland Raceway in the last round. So that's affected him. No David Russell and no Cameron Waters. Dreamtime Racing have withdrawn from the Dunlop series this weekend. So it's Mostert on pole for Ford Performance Racing. It's Percat and the Tyre Commodore for Walkinshaw Racing. And the series leader, Scott McLaughlin, in the Fujitsu Ford on the second row of the grid. 14 laps ahead at Mount Panorama Bathurst, and it's a great jump by McLaughlin. Andrew Jones has got the as-new Commodore really charging down the outside. Percat will lead, but Mostert's back to 4th.
Terrible start for Mostert. One of the most difficult starts we do all year here at Bathurst. Tallest diff ratio in the category. The cars are very hard to get off the line. Nick Percat and Scott McLaughlin did it perfectly.
On board with George Mediki, but he's got nowhere to go. Jeff Emery to the left, Tim Blanchard to the right. He's just got to sit and wait and watch.
Mostert now trying to make up for that bad start. Going around the outside at turn 2 will never work, so he slips in behind Andy Jones again, but he'll be kicking himself, Nunes, for that poor start.
There he is, back to 4th. Luke Gulden putting the pressure on in the Jayco Ford for Matthew White's team, a former winner here at Bathurst in the Dunlop series going back a few years. Great jump from Andrew Jones, new backing from Asnew, the fuel injector services company, on board that car this weekend. He'll drive with Jason Bryant in the main race for Team BOC, but Percat already starting to pull clear.
He is definitely clearing out. Whoa. And pushing hard right up to the wall through the Reed Park. But have a look at this first side as they approach Skyline for the first time.
Tumbling down the other side. Cold tyres. Decent level of fuel for 14 laps around Bathurst. Not a full tank, but not too far away.
These guys will have about 3/4 of a tank of fuel, so it'll be important that the car works not only at the start of the race, but obviously as the fuel burns off, rear tyres go off, and you want a nice balance for the end of the race.
Tim Blanchard there, J-Leg Falcon for Matthew White's team. He made his 1,000 debut last year. This car actually qualified on pole for the great race in 2010 in the hands of Mark Winterbottom. It's now part of Matthew White's team. Check this out. Oh, scarier there than in the car.
And I can tell you from a driver's point of view, yielding off the track at the chase, nothing gets the adrenaline pumping than coming down into Conrod Chase.
Rodney James in the sand at the chase, and I reckon he's done. Bogged, gone, not getting out of there.
So we'll have to see what led to Rodney getting in the sand there, whether he got some assistance. But Percat has cleared out to a handy margin, followed by McLaughlin, and Mostert hasn't been able to find a way through on Andy Jones. Replay of the start now. What an absolute great launch by McLaughlin.
But Mostert completely the opposite. Look, McLaughlin went for the lead, but Percat slammed the door shut. Another angle from the pit wall. Back in the pack. Whoa, Rodney James squeezes across as Ash Walsh was trying to get on through. He's trying to avoid his teammate George Mediki and get a run, but the Simpro Ford was trying to go there as well. So we're under safety car now at Mount Panorama. Nick Percat is the leader. A restart when we come back. Back at Bathurst with round 5, race 1. The Dunlop Series for V8 Supercars. Nick Percat will lead us back to the control line. We were under safety car because Rodney Jane ended up in the chase. Got a bit of a touch from Daniel Gillison in the end, which no doubt will be looked into. But Percat was really keen for this restart. Look at the move in the background. Scott Pye, Monster Commodore for 888 Race Engineering, down the inside on Chaz Mostert, who's slow off turn 1, and Dale Wood now comes along for the ride in the Greg Murphy Racing Commodore.
So things are just getting worse for Mostert. After a great qualifying performance, he's going to almost slip back to 7th. Should be able to get up the inside of Yulden into turn 2, but he's definitely dropped another couple of positions on this restart. So he'll be really frustrated inside that FPR Falcon.
And that FPR Ford is a car with a bit of history here at Bathurst. It's the same car that caught fire in the hands of Mark Winterbottom back in 2009, and I think the next year a certain Jay Moffat drove it to a best finished rookie position that year.
Yes, same car that Steve Richards and I used in 2010, so it's a good car, and we've seen already that it's fast. Mostert was on pole by almost 0.6 of a second, but geez, he's gone backwards in this race so far.
Bad luck for that bit of newspaper that just flew back onto the circuit there. Got demolished pretty quick. Percat, though, demolishing them early on cold tyres. Dale Wood here, GB galvanising Commodore from Greg Murphy Racing. This is the car that Marcus Sukanovic drove earlier on in the year, the car that Daniel Gillison used last year. Actually a bit of a rarity in this series that it never raced in the main series. It was built up as a sister car to the Tasman cars, but not until after the team closed down. But it was permitted to run in this series because the rules are that your car must have had history in the main series, but special dispensation for this car, which effectively was a sister chassis anyway.
Replay of the restart here. Scott Pye up the inside of Mostert. I reckon he's caught Mostert napping there a bit. Not usually a place that you see passes happen, so great restart there by the Monster Commodore, and Pye up to 4th. Here we go, Mostert up the inside of Dale Wood into the chase, but he runs wide, and Wood around the outside. Oh, Mostert a bit cheeky there, squeezes him right onto the curb, and looks like he's going to be able to hold that position.
I have seen far worse, though. In the background, Daniel Gillison peeling off into pit lane. That's a drive-through penalty for the contact with Rodney Jane that put him in the sand to bring out the first safety car period of this race. But the top view just starting to stretch away. No doubt, Mostert has probably the fastest car here, but he's buried himself in the field. Now he's really on a recovery mission.
Well, at the moment, it's all about getting his head down. He's still got 9 laps to go in this race. We know he's fast, but he's made the job hard for himself with that poor first few laps. On board now with George Madecki in the old BF Falcon, following Tim Blanchard into turn 2.
First time that he's been to Bathurst in a V8 Supercar, has been here before in V8 Ute, still holds a lap record coming into this weekend actually, but finding his way with the V8. This is on
problems
Mostert.
Again for Mostert.
Can't get it through.
So he's obviously made a mistake there at turn 2 and run wide, and Wood has got the run on him up to the cutting, and Mostert finds himself behind the Commodore again.
And he finds himself in the middle of a pack because Yulden, Blanchard and George Madecki in the Cytec Bob Jane T-Mart's Falcon have joined right onto the tail of this queue. Across the top, McPhillamy Park, Brock Skyline tumbling down. And remember too, in the Dunlop Series, they've got 2 sets of tyres, new tyres I should say, for qualifying and the 2 races.
Through the dipper, and what most teams will do, Aaron, is run 2 sets of tyres in qualifying and then simple 1 set for each race, provided that they weren't damaged in qualifying. Now on a Conrod straight with George Madecki.
And doing a good job too, just hanging tough with these guys in his first time at the mountain. Slow-mo replay here as the cars drop away. Look at Scott Pye's car, left front off the deck, left rear actually off the deck there as well. I did see a little bit of air, but look at this, Mostert's down at the chase. He's got that move back on Dale Wood, but he's wide again at the chase. He's out in the dirt. That'll give Wood another sniff to try to get back down the inside, but Chaz will cover the line. And while he's doing all this fighting, he's giving away margin to the top few.
He certainly is. Obviously no shortage of horsepower from that FPR Falcon for him to motor past Wood down Conrod Straight, but now he really has to put his head down and try and close that gap to the first 4 cars.
A couple of indications that we might see another Wood in the Dunlop Series. Dale's brother Glenn, who was part of the Shannon Supercar Showdown is tapped to maybe take over the car that Elliot Barber's driving this weekend for the next round, which is at Winton in November. Great shot up Mountain Straight. I think a lot of people don't understand the undulation and the crest in the hill here up Mountain Straight. I think they usually think it's just a straight climb.
Luke Yilden having a look up the inside. Oh, squeezed up onto the curb by Wood. Now he'll find himself on the wrong side of the road, heading up to the cutting. So this could get nasty.
They made it through.
But fortunately, they made it through. And back on your point there before of the undulation of this place, Aaron, unfortunately, TV really doesn't do it justice. You really have to come up here, walk around or drive around the circuit to experience and appreciate what this place is really about.
Blind crest on the approach to McPhillamy Park. Almost getting to the rev limiter here before you get to Skyline, but not worth grabbing another gear. Replay here at the chase. For a second, I thought that was a yellow flag that he passed under, but it's actually a slippery surface flag, so that pass is okay. And then what's going on here? Ash Walsh, his bad weekend continues. Slips out the other side, back on board with George Badiki, ex-AAA Falcon, ex-Bathurst winning Falcon, 2008 with Lowndes and Whincup, and he's on the limiter there. That is top speed. Definitely
no shortage of horsepower out of that Sonic Falcon. Yielded now up the inside of Wood, but he runs a bit wide on the exit. Badeki off in the background as well, so it's all going on.
I don't think he was the only one. I think Walsh was off there as well, but this will keep going. This is a great little scrap. Wood, Yilden and Blanchard. Remember that Yilden and Blanchard, although in different liveried cars, different model cars, were actually teammates from Matthew White's team.
So Woods managed to stay ahead of Yilden.
The man they're chasing, though, Nick Percat, continues to lead half race distance in race 1 of the mountain. Back at Bathurst with the Dunlop Series, and pit stops are not part of the development category, but they are for Ash Walsh and for a couple of his other rivals. Andrew Jones with delaminated tyres. They've rejoined the race, but this was the big one. Scott McLaughlin stepping aside at Caltech's chase. Scott Pye and Chaz Mostert firing on by, but the Fujitsu Ford was into the lane, and he also had a left rear tyre drama, which is an emerging trend, not just in the Dunlop Series, but in the main game this weekend.
It's been a big problem in practice so far throughout the weekend for the main series team, and there'll be a lot of nervous teams watching this race going, this is not good for the 161 lap 1000k race.
But how does this happen? Is it curb? Is it setup? Is it a combination of all of those things?
Well, really, it's, as you said, Noons, it's been an emerging problem all weekend, and it's not just happening to one team, one car. It's just about every team and car throughout the field. Scott Pye wide at McPhillamy Park, and Boston around the outside at Skyline. You don't usually see that happen and work, but a bit of cooperation by Scott Pye made that happen, and Mostert into second place now with all the dramas that has happened ahead of him with Andy Jones and Scott McLaughlin. Locks the inside front into Forest Elbow, so certainly can't say he's not trying.
And his pace is good, James. 2:09.92 on lap 8. Faster than Nick Percat's fastest lap of the race, which is a 10:19, but Percat has major margin. He's got a big cushion. He should be able to cruise it home from here.
Definitely has just been controlling the gap this race. Hasn't had any tyre dramas that we know about anyway, like Scott McLaughlin and Andy Jones have had. So it's just a case of bringing it home for Nick at the moment. I don't think Mostert's fast enough to catch and pass him. He might get to him, but I think the Coates Hire Commodore is just controlling the pace. Replay here of Scott Pye just wide on turn in to McPhillamy, and you don't want to be dropping two wheels on the grass there. It's one of the fastest corners on the circuit, and Mostert swoops around the outside.
I seem to remember a certain A. Moffat in a P. Brock Commodore firing off and rearranging itself into the scenery in exactly the same fashion.
It ended a lot worse for the old man back then, but lucky for Pye to get away with that. And Dale Wood now doing a solid job in fourth position, so he's obviously benefited from the fact that a couple of guys have had tyre dramas. But yeah, there will be a lot of teams in pit lane, main series teams, that will be concerned at the fact that even these Dunlop series guys are having troubles with those Dunlops.
Looking here at Luke Yulden, who is one of the runners in the BF, the older model Falcon. It will be pensioned off at the end of the year. The BF won't be eligible for the Dunlop series next season. It'll be all FGs. We're seeing a range of new cars coming that are current spec V8 Supercars Championship chassis into the Dunlop series. We're really looking forward to next year with the development category, because I think it's going to take another step up.
It certainly will. Now on board with George Madecki through Green Park. One of the best parts of the circuit for sure. Up over the rise of McPhillamy. And now check out the view, skyline. That's all you can see. You drop under the Coates Hire Bridge, down to third gear, and Madecki, he's just close enough to Blanchard to have Tim worried about him.
And these two are second-generation drivers. Of course, Tim's dad, John, a three-time starter in the 1000, and George's father, Andrew, a former podium finisher with our own Mark Larkham back in 1997. Can't get enough of this, the super slow-mo. This is across the top through the S's. Look how much curb that Mostert's able to take through there. That's really aggressive.
Certainly is, and that's definitely been a feature of both these cars, FPR cars and Triple 8 cars this year, is the curb riding ability, and seen it in graphic display there.
Darwood finished on the podium here going back to 2007. The bloke behind him, Luke Yulden, won the round that weekend driving the HPM Falcon back then. He's teaming up this weekend with Shane Van Gisbergen in the main race, the SP Tools Falcon for Stone Brothers Racing. And it's all really settled now into a rhythm. It was a bit wild and crazy early on, but this track being so long and some of the disparity of speed starts to really stretch the field out.
And this battle between Blanchard and Madecki continues to go on, and if anything, George has actually ranged a bit closer up onto the back of that J-Leg Falcon, so with a couple of laps to go, this certainly isn't settled.
Up to the cutting, steepest part of the circuit, the long climb, and plenty of young talent in this series. Let's head down to pit lane, and Larko's with a man who's keeping an eye on the action.
Noon's a guy on the lane watching this race closer than perhaps anybody is Charlie Swarcolt. Now, Charlie, as we know, is going to be running his operation out of the FPR operation next year and hasn't signed a drive yet. No, you've had some interest in Mostert in the past and some other guys, mate. Who's your fancy today?
Yeah, look, Chaz didn't get the best start then. Obviously, that didn't help things, but he's pulled through really, really well. And so you never know, but I don't think he'll catch Percat now, but obviously looking at him quite a lot.
Yeah, and I know you're not going to give anything away, Charlie, but he's a good young kid. And let's be frank, I'd like to see you sign him.
Well, no, certainly looking, mate. He's a good kid. He really is. Known him for a while, and yeah, watching intently for sure.
Thanks for the heads up, Charlie.
All right.
How's Larko's form? Doing pit lane and driver management all in one.
Well, if Mostert ends up getting the drive with Charlie next year, they might need to slip him a few bucks.
Of course, plenty of drivers being linked to that car, which will be a fourth entry from Ford Performance Racing. Charlie Schwerko will take back his racing entitlements contract, which you're currently running under the number 18 at Dick Johnson Racing as part of his settlement with that team. But we're on the last lap in round 5, race 1 of the Dunlop Series. This is not done. Madecki looks a little bit stronger in the latter part of this race. Blanchard struggling. George going the long way. I was going to say he's going to do the switchback, but he's not even going to bother. He's just going to hang out wide.
So Madecki trying to go the long way around the outside. He's still got to run on Blanchard here into turn 1, held corner. Now, what he's got to concentrate on trying to do is get a nice, good run off the exit of turn 1. Looks like he's been able to do that. And this BF Falcon, even though it's an older model car, is actually slippery in a straight line. Just snagged the limiter on the gear change from 4th to 5th, but again, he's on the wrong side of the road. Blanchard being defensive into turn 2, which he's entitled to do on the last lap.
And these two, 8th and 9th in the series, coming into the round. And they're fighting for position in the closing stages of this first 14-lapper at Bathurst. I have to say, we expected a bit more from Tim Blanchard this year. He has struggled. He hasn't really been able to push his way to the front. He's a former runner-up in the series. Hasn't quite gone his way. But I tell you what, this guy, Nick Percat, has strung together a very good race. Got away from the drama, aided by McLaughlin having tyre dramas and Mostert making a bad start. But he's done exactly what he needs to do. And if he can string 2 of these together in a weekend, he's back in the series hunt.
He certainly will be, Noons. And that Coates Hire Commodore has looked great all race. He's just controlled the pace like he's needed to, and he's going to have a comfortable margin of victory. Give him a good amount of confidence heading into not only the second race, but of course the big one on Sunday.
Down to the Caltex chase for the final time. 12 months ago, he was lifting the Peter Brock Trophy in his first start in the Super Cheap Auto Bathurst 1000. He's going to go 2 from 2 here. He'll pick up race 1 of the Dunlop Series in 2012. Lights ablaze, final turn, no one in the mirror has done it in style. The former Formula 4 champ is not done with in 2012. Percat wins race 1 at Mount Panorama. Walkinshaw Racing should be wrapped with that. Mostert, great recovery mission, but he could have won that by a mile had he not made that bad start.
You're right, Nerns. He made too many mistakes in that race, but he's back on the front row for the second race. Got lucky that McLaughlin and Andy Jones had tyre issues. Mark Percat there, Nick's dad, Garth Tander, Ryan Walkinshaw, all very happy after that result.
Great start to the weekend. Percat wins 4 seconds the margin to Mostert. Pinewood, Yulden and Blanchard the top 6. Drew and Aaron Russell both worked their way up the order. Aaron 10th from 17th on the grid.
Well, Nick, you love this mountain, and doesn't it show?
Yeah, it's a pretty cool place. It's every lap around here is just awesome fun, and the start of the race, you know, you get to push on a bit when Scotty was behind me, but I know I seem really quick across the top, catches me a little bit down the bottom, but the best fun's across the roller coaster, and that's where I have a go, and it pays off.
Stay with us after the break. Race 2. Let's see if Percat can go back to back.